All right, Lone Star Gunners, welcome to the program. You know the drill. We have another candidate on the line with us to talk about why he is running for state legislature, and we are proud to endorse him. And this one, hands down, has the coolest name on any of the ballots. It is Damon Rambo, who is running against the not so nice to gun rights or any other rights, Dennis Bonin in House District 25. And this is Damon Rambo. Damon, welcome to Lone Star Gun Talk, my friend.
Hey, Derek, thank you for having me, man.
Hey, no problem. First question, right out of the box. Are you of any relation to John Rambo?
No, sir, I am not. It is kind of interesting though that we lived in Dewey, Arizona for a while, where John Rambo is from, and my dad it was kind of this elite paratrooper. So it is kind of there is some similarities there between him and my dad, but not me.
Oh, okay. So it's a classified answer. Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about yourself, Damon.
All right. Well, I'm a pastor. I'm the pastor of First Baptist Church in Markham, Texas. I have three beautiful children. I have two wonderful grandchildren. I am a longtime avid gun rights guy, and I also like to fly. I'm working on my pilot's license, and I don't know what else you want to know. I'm just a normal guy that's really sick of all the politicians and all the little twisted games that they play.
Yes, well, we're all sick and twisted sick of all of the twisted games that politicians play, and good on you for standing up and running in order to make sure that that sort of tomfoolery stops. And I know that you said that you're a gun rights supporter, and we will get to that in a minute. But I'm sure that you have other priorities in the legislature. What are some of your non-gun rights related priorities whenever you get to Austin?
Right. So I have three big priorities. One of those being constitutional carry, which is a gun rights issue, but the other two is abolishing abortion and and doing something about property taxes. Hopefully, abolishing property taxes eventually. I believe that abortion infringes on a person's right to life, and I believe that that property taxes infringes on a person's right to property. And those are two very fundamental rights, and I think that we need to do something about both of those.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And what sort of things would you like to see if you were king of Texas? You could just snap your fingers and have everything, your entire will done. What would you think that a taxation system in the state of Texas would look like under your ideal uh, will?
Right. I'm betting you've heard this a lot, but I think we should switch to a consumption tax, like a sales tax, an expanded sales tax system. Actually, I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse, though, because I think we spend a whole bunch of money on stuff that we have absolutely no business involving the government in. And so I think that someone needs to seriously take a red pen and just go through line by line through the budget and just cut. And and then after we do that, we need to switch to a consumption tax, something that doesn't deprive people of the right to property and distributes the tax load evenly across the population.
You are a man after my own heart, sir. I just want you to know. When people think of out of control spending, it automatically defaults to the federal level, and there's no doubt an atrocious amount of wasteful spending at that level. But despite the fact that the state of Texas runs surpluses every 2 years, people don't realize how much waste the state of Texas has. And so cutting spending is incredibly important. And the fact that you say this needs to be a priority before we can rein in taxation, that says a lot that you really understand the problems that we're facing. And so I really commend you for that, and I really appreciate that. A lot of people will say, well, if you cut taxes, then we're not going to bring in as much revenue. And that's kind of the point. You don't want to bring in as much revenue. You want to cut revenue because you want to cut spending. That's
Right.
that whole fiscal conservative thing. Um,
I think people sometimes take for granted the fact. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think sometimes people take for granted the fact that the state of Texas is in enormous debt. We look
Absolutely.
at the federal debt, but we are hundreds of billions of dollars in debt in the state of Texas, and we don't have a printing press. We can't just print our way out of it the way that the federal government does to some degree with quantitative easing and all the little machinations that they use. We don't have any of that. We have to just be honest and pay off our debt. And right now, I mean, it is not looking good. I think I saw somewhere where we are somewhere. Some districts are in some school districts are as much as $80,000 per student in debt.
That's
That's insane. I mean,
that
something
is
has to
insane.
change there.
I was actually looking at the debt clock just the other day. In Texas, the state of Texas is $292 billion in debt. That is an obscene amount of money that I can't even fathom. And so you're absolutely right that we need to do something about it, and we can't just keep spending. And we don't have and you'll have to forgive this because it's not really a solution, but we don't have the printing press to essentially buy our way out of it because it doesn't work like that at the federal level, but at least they have something to kind of push the
Right,
debt down the road, which we don't have
right.
that.
They destroy all of our savings by just printing, by inventing more money out of thin air. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's get to the Second Amendment, and you started off by saying that your priority is constitutional carry, but let's talk about how the Second Amendment and the federal government correlate, and what how the federal government should approach gun rights.
I think the federal government needs to butt completely out of it. I mean, as originally written, the Second Amendment, and for that matter, the entire Bill of Rights, was intended to restrain federal government. It was intended to protect the rights of the states and individual citizens by restraining federal government from doing certain things. And one of those is infringing upon a person's right to bear arms. And so, because of that, any federal gun law whatsoever, in my opinion, is completely unconstitutional. Um,
Does
and
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Does
no,
that
no, go
include
ahead.
like uh the Nick's background check system?
Absolutely. I mean, listen. The fact of the matter is, again, the federal government is completely forbidden from infringing. We throw that word infringement around a lot, but infringe doesn't mean to prohibit. Infringe means to limit or to limit something in any way. So if you're trying to walk across a room and I just stand in your way and you walk around me, that's infringement. And so the idea being that the federal government is completely prohibited from being involved in that. Now, can states and should states, cooperate in a way and make sure that dangerous felons or whatever don't get firearms? Well, sure, they can do that, but the federal government shouldn't really be involved in any of it. It's just not their job.
I really like that analogy. How if I just stand in your way, even though you can get around me, that's an infringement. That's not something that I've heard a lot of people. Well, I've never heard anybody put it quite like that, and so I'm probably gonna have to steal that from you. That's I hope
You are
that's
more
okay.
than welcome.
Okay.
No, you're more than welcome.
Okay, so let's get to the states and how the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms applies in the states. What are your philosophies on that?
Well, as originally written, the Bill of Rights was not directed at the states. Now we've got the 14th Amendment, which came into the picture, and which does prohibit states from limiting, taking away fundamental rights. And at that point, I believe the 14th Amendment brings the Second Amendment to bear on the states. However, again, one of the problems with our country right now is that you have these activist courts that are using not the Second Amendment so much, but other amendments as bludgeons against the state. You have, oh well, that teacher prayed in school or whatever, and so they take the First Amendment and they try to beat the state over the head with it. That I don't think that was ever the intent of the Bill of Rights. Now, I believe that we need to, in the state of Texas, um, take what's in the Second Amendment in the Constitution and enshrine that in our own Constitution. That we have the right to bear arms and that right shall not be infringed. Right now, we have kind of wishy-washy language, I think, in the Texas Constitution, and something needs to be done about that.
Recently, the governor, former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, signed a bill that banned bump stocks in the state of New Jersey. And there's no grandfather in there. If you are in possession of one, you have to turn it into law enforcement, or else you face, I believe it's a felony charge of possession of one. As far as things like bump stocks, suppressors, or even just fully automatic weapons are concerned, how do you think those should be regulated, or should they not be regulated at either the state or the federal level?
I don't believe they should be regulated by anyone. The fact of the matter is, the Second Amendment of the Constitution is a reflection of a higher law. You know, God has given men the right to defend themselves, to defend their families, even if they're defending their family and themselves from the government. I mean, that's just the way that it is. We have the right by God given to us to defend ourselves, and so I don't think that the government has an interest in prohibiting or infringing on our rights at any level, the state, local, or whatever. The idea that we're going to ban bump stocks, I mean, you and I both know you can do what a bump stock does without a bump stock. You know, just from practice, you can do the same thing with any semi-automatic rifle. And as far as suppressors go, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Suppressor is nothing but a safety device that keeps you from blowing out your eardrums, when you fire. So it's not like the movies, where you shoot and it just goes pew 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 like a little BB gun. Uh,
Can
the
you
the
make
whole
that sound
idea,
again? I'm sorry, that
no,
was.
I,
I'm
the,
kidding. I'm kidding.
the
Uh,
the whole idea of trying to capitulate to the left in that way just makes me sick. It makes me sick that the NRA came out, and oh, we'll do bump stocks bans or whatever. They don't people on the constitutional side of things need to start recognizing that the left is not going to be happy with some little compromise. As soon as you give them one little bite, they're going to demand the whole sandwich. So you just need to draw a line at the beginning and say no, and make a strong stand.
and it's important to note that we've given them that one bite with the National Firearms Act, all the way dating back to 1934, and every federal gun control bill since then. And
Absolutely. Is there any other phrase that is so unconstitutional just in its name? The National Firearms Act. Uh,
maybe the Gun Control Act,
uh,
but both are still equally bad. And some, well, actually, in some sections, it's worse than others. But I want to move on now and talk about constitutional carry. As you know, we had two bills filed last session. One was constitutional carry, and the other, I called it compromised carry. It was not nearly up to my standards or our standards as an organization of being worthy of the title constitutional carry. And there's a bunch of reasons for that I could get into, but I don't really want to at the moment. But one of the things that I do want to ask about in HB 375, which was Jonathan Stickland's bill, he had in there a specific prohibition for law enforcement that prohibited them from detaining anybody who is otherwise following the law just because they were carrying. Do you feel that that sort of thing should be codified into the law, and why?
yeah, I mean it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we have to codify that into law, but I think that we do. We're already guaranteed protection from unlawful search and seizure, but unfortunately there's just a lot of layers of government that just don't accept that. They don't abide by that. And so I absolutely think that we need to write that straight into the law, that you're not going to go around messing with people just because they have a firearm on their hip or whatever. the unless there is probable cause, unless they know or think they know somebody has actually committed a crime, police officers have no business messing with a citizen.
We all want to support property rights. You mentioned property taxes earlier and how it effectively strips you of your property rights. And property rights are incredibly important and they should be respected. And that includes if you disagree with them. Uh, if somebody posts up a sign that says, please don't bring your firearm in here, as much as it's painful for me to wrap my mind around that logic, it should be, for the most part, it should be adhered to. Now, the problem that I have with the current way 30-06 and 30-07 is set up is that it doesn't necessarily take an authority at the business to press any sort of charges whatsoever. If you walk past a sign and just a law enforcement officer sees you, you can be charged with a Class C misdemeanor. If the authority does see you, asks you to leave, and then you don't, it's then a Class A. I would like to make it I would like to see it made into where you have to be asked by an authority to either conceal your firearm or leave. At which point, if you don't, then and only then should it be a misdemeanor charge. What do you think about something like that?
I think that's right. I think the whole 30-06, 30-07 thing is kind of ridiculous. As a business, I mean, as a business owner, I think you should be able to put up a sign on your front thing and say, please don't bring your firearms in here if that's what you want to do. Although I think that's stupid, and we as decent people should just see that and say, hey, that guy has the right, or that homeowner or whatever it is has the right to have control over his property, and then we just don't bring our firearms in there, or we maybe do business with somebody that's more firearm friendly or whatever. I don't think that the law should get involved until we see that sign. We walk inside. The person says, "Hey, didn't you see the sign? You need to do something with your firearm." And then at that point, the law can get involved, because at that point, whatever reason you're asking someone to leave, if it's your property and you're asking them to leave and they don't, they're trespassing. So, in fact, I think that the current trespassing laws we already have, setting aside the 30-06 and 30-07, is more than sufficient to handle that situation.
Now, nobody wants to mix things like firearms and alcohol, and under no circumstances are we going to advocate getting blitzed at a bar while carrying. The problem is, though, that the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission does make it a felony just to cross the threshold of a bar with a firearm. And the problem that I have with that, for one, is you haven't done anything. And for two, people like me, I don't drink a lot. I drink a little bit, but not a lot. And I don't even remember the last time I got good and tipsy. I wasn't even that way at my own wedding. So I'm not a huge drinker, but I do like to go into bars occasionally. Sometimes it's because of the food. Sometimes I'm with my wife who is out with her friends and I'm designated driver or whatever. I just don't think that something like that should be an automatic felony or a felony at all, just crossing the threshold. But I do think that that sort of thing should be kind of reverted back to the same discussion we just had about 30-06 and 30-07, where yeah, it's not an issue unless you are asked to leave and you don't, or you actually get intoxicated. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. What do we do about, people that are chaperoning people and are designated drivers and that kind of thing, and they want to, they're in a sketchy part of downtown Houston or something, and they want to be able to have their firearm to protect their friends or whatever that they're taking care of for that night. What about, what about people like yourself that aren't getting going in there to get plastered or whatever? They're just going in there to enjoy the atmosphere. The fact of the matter is, they shouldn't be disarmed. They shouldn't have to disarm to go try to have a good time or just to relax or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think we should have the same criteria that we have for, drunk and disorderly. When you've got drunk and you're actually endangering people, at that point it becomes a crime, I think.
Not to mention that whenever you are out in an environment such as a bar, the people around you are a bit unpredictable at times. And even as a sober person trying to de escalate a situation, just talking to people, sometimes it gets out of hand. And you might find yourself where you would need a firearm to at least diffuse the situation. Nobody says that you have to squeeze the trigger, but in a situation like that, I would be willing to argue that it's more of a necessity in an environment like that than just say going to the grocery store. Do you agree?
Right. I mean, I wonder how many bar fights could have been stopped, or maybe even killings in bars could have been stopped if somebody would have had a firearm there to just pull out and say, freeze, stop doing that, or whatever. I think you're right. People, it all gets back down to first principles. You have the right to defend yourself, unless you are drinking to the point where you are getting inebriated and you're no longer in control of your faculties. You should have the right to have that firearm with you, and be able to have the right to protect yourself and the people with you.
Going to the discussions from last session, one of the things that a lot of people, and not necessarily on our side of the aisle, had with constitutional carry is they didn't want college students to be able to carry a firearm on campus because there's lots of parties that might happen and they might get drunk, and even though they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, they're not responsible enough because they're still in college. Sort of, that was essentially the argument. And to be honest, I don't like the way the current campus carry law is written because it's very convoluted, very confusing. Somebody like me that studies the statutes as a hobby because I'm sick and twisted like that still gets confused as to where these statutes apply and where they don't. I think that
Right.
constitutional carry should extend to all public areas, and that includes state-funded universities. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. In fact, I would go even a step further. I think we need to nullify unconstitutional federal prohibitions, like at the post office. I think we need laws that specifically prohibit state law enforcement officers, state and local law enforcement officers, from enforcing bans at places like post offices. You know, people don't realize people don't realize that the post if you carry a firearm into a post office, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's
And
a that's a federal felony.
right, and I think we need to nullify that. I think we need to say no. Sheriffs, city police. If you're not a federal employee, you're not allowed to respond to that call. You're not allowed to enforce that law. You're not allowed to make any arrests in association with that, because that is an unconstitutional mandate. And so, absolutely, if it's a government funded thing, then you should have your Second Amendment rights.
I absolutely 100% agree. And I said this on another interview, and I really think that the only sort of state or even federally mandated gun-free zone that I can see having an argument would be like a prison. And that's about it. I can't I can't see anybody justifying anywhere else that's a government building because it's our building. We paid for it. Our tax dollars paid for it. And so it's effectively all of our property. And so
Right.
I don't see how laws like this can be upheld in court. I don't see how we can think that that's okay, even just from a legislative standpoint. And I would like to see all gun free zones from a state mandated standpoint removed. I would like to see private establishment gun free zones reformed the way we talked about. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. And not necessarily that we have here in Texas, but it would essentially prohibit them from happening. Incidents like what we just saw in Florida, I think we would see less of that here in Texas. What do you think?
I agree. The old adage holds true. The only defense against a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And the more good guys we have with guns, the safer people are going to be.
I absolutely agree. And I find it funny that a lot of people on the left want to try and restrict the types of arms that we can have, and restrict magazine capacities because they don't see a need for it. And rights aren't about needs. Rights are about what we're comfortable with exercising. And if that means that an M240 Bravo with 100 round belt is what I feel comfortable defending myself with, even though it weighs I think it weighs about 20 pounds. It's not a light weapon. But if that's what I feel that I need to defend myself, then I should have the right to do it. And to be honest, it hasn't been that long since we saw the riots in Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, and all elsewhere, where you see people looting and destroying businesses that could have been defended by such weapons. And so I think it's important that we point out there might not be a need right now, but eventually there might be. You won't need it until you need it. And if you don't have it, and then it's too late.
Right. And I tell people all the time too that technology is quickly making the whole banning gun things a historical debate that doesn't matter. I mean, that's literally going to just, I think it's just going to go away after a time, because right now we're getting to a point where, someone can just about make any kind of firearm they want to in their garage. I, I milled my own lower receiver I did an AR-15 build with a, uh, uh, AK round AK round conversion 7.62 by 39. But I milled the lower out myself. I I did all the cuts, did all the drilling, did all the so you have these guys that are printing them out on 3D printers. They're actually they have these computerized lathes that are coming out that'll sit on your desktop and will cut out metal in any shape you want to, and all these kind of things. And all this stuff is coming out, and at some point, I think the liberals are just going to have to realize there is absolutely no way of stopping this. You know,
Not at
even
all.
even to even to the point of, I think I had someone comment on my Facebook page earlier. He said, "What about guided rocket launchers?" And I was like, "Well, there's no such thing as a guided rocket launcher, because rocket launchers are by definition not guided." But he said, well, okay, missile launcher. I was like, I'm not really concerned about missile launchers, because they're 200, $500,000, and I don't think we have to worry about playboys running around with a missile launcher on the back seat of their Lamborghini or whatever. Uh, and if someone like that buys one, I think they're going to have it out at their ranch and play with it anyway. I don't really care. I just don't think I don't think any of that is a big issue. I think that in almost every case, I think the free market will take care of those outlandish things that people come up with. Well, what about, a nuclear weapon? Well, no one is going to be able to come up with the money to build a nuclear weapon in their garage. So, and if they do, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. They're not going to sell them at Walmart.
Right.
Uh,
The beauty about
so
capitalism is it requires a demand in order for there to be a supply.
right,
So
right. It's the whole argument that they come up with is just ridiculous. I mean,
they're incredibly extreme that would never pan out in the most anarchist form of a nation. It would never actually come to fruition that way with no governing body whatsoever. That's how extreme some of these leftists get in arguing, and I find it humorous to say the least because you can't do anything. You can't answer the question because it's so laughable. And so all you can do is laugh, and it kind of makes them even more mad at the fact that you're laughing at them. So I enjoy that. So let's go back to you, Damon. Why are you running, and what makes you a far better candidate than Dennis Bonin?
um, I'm running because I look at the state of Texas, and my kids' future is in jeopardy. I believe there's just a serious left wing type push, and I hate to define things in terms of right and left, but there's just no way of getting around that. There's just a serious left wing push in our state, and if somebody doesn't stand up and do something about it, uh, this is going to be the communist state of Texas in another 20 years, and someone has to do something. And I know my current state representative, Dennis Bonham, is not doing that. He is going right along with Joe Strauss and all the leftist goons in the state house, and I'm just tired of calling his office and him not picking up the phone. I'm tired of sending emails and him responding with form letters. I'm tired of him not coming out even to wave at activists and stuff that meet at the Capitol when other representatives make time in their busy schedule to do that. The fact of the matter is, our representative is not a good guy. He needs to go. He's Joe Strauss's right hand man, and he, uh, as long as he is in the state house, we will not get constitutional carry. We will not get a true abolition of abortion. He is against those things, and He's made that clear.
If people want to help you out, where can they go, and what sorts of things do you need the most?
So, I don't even know. I don't even know at this point what we need. Donations, DamonRambo.com. You can go in there and donate. You can donate money. You can donate your time. We're of course looking for all the poll workers for the upcoming early voting locations that we can get. That would be a big help. So anything like that.
All right. And you're also pretty active on Facebook as well?
Absolutely. If you, I invite everyone to look at the Facebook page. If you see anyone saying something stupid, it'd be some of these left wing guys come in there and say some really stupid things. I have to kind of watch my tongue. And I just invite you to unleash upon them.
Well, if there's any other way that we can help, please let me know. Guys, you heard him. Go to DamonRambo.com and donate anything, $5, $10, even $1. If you can donate anything, that helps immensely. And, getting yard signs, radio ads, TV ads out before March 6th primary will do a world of help trying to get somebody as liberty loving as Damon Rambo. Damon, thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck in the March 6th primary, sir.
You are welcome. Thank you very much for having me on.
Anytime, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from him. If you live in House District 25, which is southern Brazoria and Matagorda counties, basically Angleton, Bay City, all the way in between, if you live out there, please, I urge you to vote for Damon Rambo on March 6th. Early voting starts February 2nd and goes through March 2nd, and then Election Day is March 6th. During early voting, you can go to vote at any precinct in the county you live in. On Election Day, you have to go to your specific precinct to cast your ballot, and we urge you to do so for Damon Rambo, as we do for all of our endorsed candidates. Anyway, until next time, Lone Star Gunners, arm yourself with knowledge and share the ammo.